Don't you just love it when you have really cool finds like this? This is a beautiful scarf I found at a thrift store. I'm going to show you how to take something as simple and beautiful as this simple scarf and turn it into this cool top. All that's coming up next on Sewing with Nyla. So as I mentioned, this was a scarf that I bought at a local thrift shop, and it is just so cool. It's really wide. As a matter of fact, I'm going to guess at how wide it is, but it looks like it's about a yard wide. And as far as the length goes, let's use our handy dandy yardage check. 1, 2. So roughly it's about 2 yards by 1 yard. But I thought it was just so cool. It's in one of my favorite colors, which is purple. Loving purple. Get started. We're going to take the scarf and I'm going to fold it in half. Now I'm going to work my way to the middle because I don't want it to move. And I'm going to take a pin and pin the center spot. That is the very center of the scarf. And open it back up and make sure everything's still even. Now fold that scarf in half, which gives you a center mark. So you're going to take this center mark and I'm going to put it right here at the head of the mannequin. Now that I have the scarf draped over the mannequin, and you notice I put it at the head of the mannequin, the reason for doing that is because you want the shoulder seams to come up high enough, because if I put it right here, the shoulder seams would be right here. So by putting it at the head of the mannequin, the shoulder seams will be on the shoulder. And I can take my handy dandy chalk pen and I can put a chalk mark right there to give me that opening for the neck. And I'm going to stop it right smack in the middle, which is right about there. I'm only marking one side because I can mirror the left side with the right side. And when I cut this, I can actually lay it on top of each other and just cut one opening. And that will give us the opening for the neckline. So let's go ahead and get that done. So I've taken the scarf and I folded it in half because I have the half mark right here. I know you can't see this, but this is my chalk line right here. I'm going to make it a little darker. Hopefully we can see it. Here is my chalk line right here. So I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut out that hole. But anyway, so now you got this wide opening because since this is a leisure top, we really want a nice soft opening. So now what we need to do is we need to roll hem. Now you can check out my video on how to do a roll hem. So the neckline has been pressed, and like I said, it's pretty wide because it's kind of like an off the shoulder. But let's say, for instance, you didn't want an off the shoulder, or let's say, for instance, you cut this a little wider than you really wanted to. So I have this on the wrong side. The wonderful thing about this is you can make this adjustment and make this top to fit you. So because you're working with a scarf and it's really thin and you can serge the edges. So here's one side here. So let's say, for instance, it's an inch or an inch and a half too long, or maybe 2 inches too long than what you want. So what you're going to do is you'll take your ruler, and what I've done is I've taken the ends and put the ends together so that the ends butt up evenly, and this gives us the shoulder. I'm going to take my ruler. You can pin it or you can use the chalk pen, which I'm going to use the chalk pen and I'm going to pin it. So I'm just going to mark 2 inches. I'm going to put the 2-inch mark right here. It's kind of hard to see it, so let me pin it so you guys can see it. So I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to take my ruler and I'm going to mark 2 inches right here. And I'm going to come across and do the same thing a little bit farther down. Now, because we want to mirror everything, You're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So slide the other side over, and you're going to mark 2 inches. Now mind you, this is only if you cut too much and you want it a little shorter than what you did after you cut it, because you can cut it smaller and you won't have to go through this step. But just in case you do, I wanted to show you what you could do if you made a mistake. And now what you're going to do is you're going to sew straight across that 2-inch mark that you made. Now you have made the top neck a little narrower than what it was before. It's not so wide. So now we got to figure out how to finish off these edges. Now mind you, you got a tag right here. I'm going to go ahead and just clip the stitch that's holding that tag in place and get rid of it, because you don't really need it. So now you can see your stitch right here. You're going to take the scissor, and I'm going to leave about a 1/2 inch seam allowance at the top. And we're just going to cut this all the way across, leaving about a 1/2 inch. I'm guessing at it. You can leave more if you need to. So now that I've finished off the edge, and I want you to see, I don't know if you can see it, but you have a seam, but you also have a rolled seam on top of that. So that way all of the raw edges are caught inside. So now we're going to press this, and I'm going to put it on the mannequin, and we're going to see if there's anything else we want to do to this scarf or this top before we finish it off. Now the neckline has been done, and we did the seam to shorten the neckline if you cut it too low. If you didn't cut it, that's fine. One of the good things about sewing this side seam or taking that neckline up is because now you have a seam that lets you know exactly where the shoulder lines up, and you don't have to worry about that guessing game. So maybe that's a good thing. If you cut it too big, you can go back and just stitch it across. Well, now what we have is just a cape. We don't want a cape, we want a top. So in order to make the top, that means you've got to stitch up the side somewhere. So I'm going to turn this sideways so you can actually see on the mannequin. Here's the bust line, and if you'll notice, that's about where you have your armhole stitches, right about here. So that's where you want to start pinning and pin straight down. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to close this down, turn it back, take a couple of pins. I'm going to hold that shoulder seam out. And since this has these prints of the snake skin, like the dark purple here with the fuchsia, it looks like the seam is going to be right here in this dark purple, where here's your bust line. So I'm going to go a little bit above that bust line, and I'm going to take a pin and put a pin right there. That lets me know that that'll give me an armhole, but it'll also let me know to stitch this straight down. So you're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So now what I'll do is I'll go to the table, and I'm going to line this up so that we know exactly where to sew. And then you'll match this up with the other side so that you get a mirrored edge on both sides. And that way it's even. The armhole is even on both sides. So let's do that next. Now back at the table, this is where we put the pin. And it's kind of easy to figure this out because, as you can see, the top of that purple, there's 2 designs. So I'm going to do the top of this design and make sure that both of the ends are put together. And then I'm going to just pin periodically all the way down. Now we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So now I'm going to sew right smack down the middle of this design. Because I have a design, I don't have to mark it. But if you don't have a design, you might want to mark this to make sure it's straight. We're going to come in and we're going to start to sew. Remember, it's very important that you backstitch at this point where you're going to start, and I would suggest you do a couple of back stitches because this is where the arm is going to go in. So I'm going to back stitch maybe 2 or 3 times. Mind you, if you're hippier on the bottom and you start to do this top, this stitch on the side, you might want to, instead of coming straight down, you might want to come out at an angle so that way it covers your lower body. So now that it's done, so because this now is one length, what I would like to do is I think I'd like to have mine a little angled. So I tried this on and I found out that I need about 6 inches of height in the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure. The center is right here, right down the center. Move this over so you can see it. So here is the center of my top. So I'm going to measure 6 inches up from the top, and I'm going to put a pin mark there at that 6-inch mark. And at that 6-inch mark is where I'm going to make an adjustment in the front and the back, because I kind of want it to kind of have a little bit of a curve. That's just me. So I'm not measuring anything. I'm just going to start cutting, and I'm going to cut that 6-inch measurement out. Nothing fancy. So that way, now I have this circular opening that's not going to make this top extremely long, but it's going to give me a nice little character. It'll drop down on the sides. So just as you did the neckline, you want to roll stitch this bottom layer. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. So I wanted you to see the finished top, and you see where I did the little cutout, the 6-inch cutout that tapered off on the side. It gave the top a nice little character on the bottom. The top is finished, so let me show you what it looks like on. So here's the top I have completed, and as you can see, it turned out rather nice. So remember I mentioned that if you're not a straight body, which I am not, I have some curves, so I had to make it a little bit bigger here. So whenever you go to stitch that seam, rather than stitching straight down, you would stitch straight down and you would come out at an angle to compensate for your midsection as well as the hips. But I think it turned out rather nice. So this is the result of a beautiful 1-yard scarf that I got from a thrift store and turned it into this really cool top. So I hope this tip has been helpful, and I hope that you try it. Happy sewing!